Emperor Kethzerak sat on his throne deep inside the imperial palace on Kethanara. Staring at reports, it filled him with something he had never felt before: fear. In 6 months, the impossible humans had destroyed half his fleet, liberated dozens of worlds, and turned his eternal empire into a laughingstock across the galaxy. "Your Imperial Majesty," his advisor whispered, "the human fleet has appeared in our home system." Through the palace's great windows, Kethzerak could see the human ships hanging in space above his world. They had come through quantum portals that bypassed every defense the Empire had built over thousands of years. At the center of the fleet was Admiral Carter's flagship. Its guns pointed directly at the capital city. Admiral Carter stood on her bridge, looking down at the world that had enslaved 3 million others. Behind her was the largest human fleet ever assembled, but it wasn't just human ships anymore. Vessels from dozens of liberated species had joined the fight, all flying under Earth's banner of freedom. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," Lieutenant Jackson reported. "Put it on screen," Carter ordered. Emperor Kethzerak appeared, his reptilian features twisted with rage and fear. "You dare bring your primitive ships to the homeworld of the Empire?" "Your Imperial Majesty," Carter said with cold politeness, "we've come to offer you the same choice you offered Earth: submit or be destroyed." The Emperor's forearms trembled with fury. "The Keltharian Empire has ruled this galaxy for millions of years. We will never bow to animals like you." Carter nodded calmly. "Dr. Torres, please demonstrate our ultimate weapon, the quantum portal." That opened next to Kethanara was the largest ever created. Through it, an entire star system emerged from quantum space. 3 worlds that had been enslaved by the Empire suddenly appeared in normal space, their populations cheering as they saw their oppressor's homeworld for the first time. "As you can see," Carter continued, "we can relocate entire star systems. Your empire is no longer safe anywhere in the galaxy." On one of the liberated worlds, General Baker was leading the final assault on an imperial fortress, the Keltharian. Troops inside had refused to surrender, even after their homeworld was surrounded. But Baker had learned something important about fighting aliens over the past months. "Remember," he told his soldiers, "they're tough, but they've never faced real resistance before. They don't know how to handle losing." The fortress fell in 2 hours. The Keltharian soldiers, who had conquered 1,000 worlds, broke and ran when faced with humans who fought with the fury of those who had everything to lose. Captain Martinez stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as refugee ships from across the galaxy arrived at the growing human stations. What had started as an evacuation fleet had become the foundation of a new civilization. Humans were building quantum highways that connected freed worlds across half the galaxy. "Captain, we're getting requests for help from 12 more worlds," her communications officer reported. "They want to join the rebellion," Martinez smiled. "Send them quantum communicators and technical assistance. Every world that wants freedom deserves a chance to fight for it." Dr. Phillips was working in her laboratory, putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest achievement. The quantum network was complete, connecting every liberated world in a web of instantaneous communication and travel that could never be broken by Imperial censors. "Susan, you did it," Dr. Torres said, looking at the readouts. "The network is stable across 6,000 light years." "We all did it," Phillips replied. "Every human who refused to give up made this possible." Meanwhile, Jake Morrison had been promoted to Secretary of Xenological Affairs for the new Terran Commonwealth. His job was to help other species adapt to freedom after centuries of slavery. It was harder than fighting a war, but just as important. The Xeraphim want to establish their own government, his assistant, Lieutenant Foster, reported. The Vorthan refugees need new worlds to settle. and the Mixery are asking for help rebuilding their culture. Jake looked out at the space around Earth, where construction crews from a dozen species were building humanity's first interstellar city. Help them all, he said. That's what freedom means. Colonel Wright was leading the construction of the galaxy's first quantum defense grid. Never again would any world face the kind of ultimatum Earth had received. Any planet threatened by aggressors could call for help and have human ships appear instantly. "Sir, the grid is operational," Sergeant Davis reported. "Any world in the network can summon aid in less than 5 minutes?" Wright nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Let's see any empire try to threaten innocent people now." Back on Cathanara, Emperor Keth-Zorak realized his empire was collapsing. Reports flooded in from across Imperial space. World after world was declaring independence. Imperial governors were being overthrown. The Keltherian military was in full retreat on 100 fronts. "Your Majesty," his military advisor said desperately, "we must negotiate. The humans have shown they can move entire star systems. They could relocate our homeworld to the edge of the galaxy." The Emperor looked out at the human fleet above his capital. For millions of years, the Keltherian Empire had ruled through fear. Now they faced an enemy that refused to be afraid. "Prepare my personal transport," the Emperor said quietly. "I will go to Earth." President Williams received Emperor Keth-Zorak in the same chamber where Admiral Carter had first heard the demand for tribute. But now the roles were reversed. The Emperor knelt before the human president, his empire in ruins around him. "I surrender," Keth-Zorak said, his voice barely a whisper. "The Keltherian Empire formally submits to the Terran Commonwealth." Williams looked down at the creature who had threatened to enslave humanity. "Your surrender is accepted. But no, the age of empire is over. From now on, every world chooses its own destiny." 1 year later, Admiral Carter stood on the observation deck of the Commonwealth flagship, watching as the first interstellar parliament met on the new station orbiting Earth. Representatives from over 1,000 worlds had come to help write the laws that would govern their new galaxy-wide democracy. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Jake Morrison said, joining her at the window. Carter nodded. "Hard to believe it all started with them demanding tribute." "We gave them tribute," Jake replied with a smile. "We gave them freedom. The choice was always theirs." Dr. Torres finished her work in the quantum laboratory, looking at the readings that showed the gateway network spanning half the galaxy. Exploration teams were pushing into unknown regions of space, making contact with new species and offering them the same choice humanity had made, freedom or slavery. "Dr. Torres," her assistant called out, "we're getting signals from outside the galaxy. There might be other empires out there, other species that need help." Torres looked at the data and grinned. "Then we better get ready to help them." The monument that stood where the first Keltherian ship had landed bore a simple inscription that could be read in over 3,000 languages. They demanded tribute. "We gave them freedom. The choice was always theirs." But below that, in smaller letters, was another message that every human child learned. When someone asks you to choose between freedom and safety, choose freedom. When they ask you to choose between liberty and life, choose liberty. Some things are worth more than survival. The Keltharian Empire had ruled the galaxy for millions of years by making species choose between submission and destruction. They had learned too late that they had chosen to fight the one race in the galaxy that would rather die free than live in chains and in choosing death. Humanity had discovered how to remake the very fabric of space and time itself. The age of empire was over. The age of freedom had begun. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, children played games where they pretended to be the humans who had said no to the mightiest empire in galactic history. The story would be told for millions of years to come. How Earth gave the galaxy its greatest gift, not through conquest, but through the simple refusal to surrender. The stars themselves had learned that some things could never be conquered, never be enslaved, and never be broken. Freedom was one of those things, and humanity was its guardian. Admiral Zethkar stood in his damaged command center, staring at reports that made no sense. In 3 days of fighting, he had lost 60 ships to these primitive humans. No species had ever inflicted such losses on the Keltharian Empire. "Sir, the Void Reapers have arrived," his tactical officer reported. "Admiral Kethmal wants to speak with you." Zethkar straightened his uniform. The Void Reapers were the Empire's most elite soldiers, genetically enhanced warriors who had never known defeat. If anyone could crush human resistance, it would be them. Admiral Kethmal appeared on the screen, his forearms crossed in displeasure. "Zethkar, explain to me how a primitive world has destroyed 60 of our ships." "The humans fight differently than other species," Zethkar said carefully. "They use unconventional tactics. They refuse to surrender even when facing certain death." "Excuses," Kethmal snarled. "My Void Reapers will show these animals what real war looks like. Prepare to witness proper conquest." The communication ended, leaving Zethkar alone with his doubts. He had conquered dozens of worlds, but something about these humans worried him. They seemed to get stronger the more desperate their situation became. Commander Sarah Davis led the new Quantum Strike Force, 20 soldiers equipped with portable wormhole generators that Dr. Phillips and Dr. Torres had developed. The devices were experimental and dangerous, but they gave humans something they had never had before: the ability to appear anywhere instantly. "Remember, the portals are unstable," Sarah told her team as they prepared for their first mission. "You have 30 seconds max before they collapse. Get in, hit your target, get out." Lieutenant Mark Johnson checked his equipment one more time. "Commander, what if we get stuck on the other side?" "Then you fight until you can't fight anymore," Sarah replied. "Same as always." The Void Reaper landing ships descended toward Earth like falling stars. Each ship carried 100 of the Empire's deadliest soldiers. Admiral Kethmal watched from orbit, confident that human resistance would crumble within hours. The first Void Reaper stepped out of his landing pod in downtown Chicago. He was 9 feet tall, covered in bio-armor that could stop tank shells, and armed with weapons that could level buildings. Behind him came 99 more just like him. They had conquered 1,000 worlds together. Earth would be no different, then. Sarah Davis and her Quantum Strike Force appeared. The quantum portals opened in midair, and human soldiers dropped through them like vengeful spirits. They landed behind the Void Reapers, beside them, even above them on building rooftops. The aliens spun around, trying to target enemies that seemed to materialize from thin air. "Take out their heavy weapons first," Sarah shouted, firing her rifle at a Void Reaper's power pack. The explosion sent the giant warrior flying into a building. Lieutenant Johnson opened a portal under a group of aliens and watched them fall through it into the middle of Lake Michigan. Portal grenades work, he called out. The Void Reapers fought back with brutal efficiency, but they had never faced an enemy that could attack from impossible angles. Every time they organized a defense, human soldiers would appear behind them through quantum doorways. Captain Billy Thompson floated in the command chair of his ship, the Nighthawk II, watching the alien supply convoy through his sensors. Billy was Alex Thompson's son, and he had inherited his father's intelligence along with his mother's stubbornness. "Captain, we've got 20 alien cargo ships and 10 escorts," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Paula Clark. "They're carrying replacement troops and equipment." Billy studied the tactical display. His small fleet of captured alien ships had been hitting Caltharian supply lines for weeks. Each successful raid brought back more technology and more intelligence about the Empire. "Take us through the quantum portal," Billy ordered. "Let's show them what humans learned from their own technology." The portal opened in space, a shimmering doorway that led directly behind the alien convoy. Billy's ships emerged from quantum space like sharks attacking a school of fish. The alien escorts never had a chance. Human ships, armed with modified Caltharian weapons and powered by quantum drives, tore through the convoy in minutes. Billy's flagship destroyed 3 cargo ships before the aliens even knew they were under attack. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from all over their territory," Lieutenant Clark reported. "Other human fleets are hitting targets across 6 star systems." Billy smiled. "Good. Let's see how they like fighting a war on 100 fronts." Dr. Torres made another breakthrough in her quantum laboratory. Working around the clock with teams of scientists from every nation on Earth, she had discovered how to scale up the wormhole technology beyond anything they had imagined. "Admiral Carter, you need to see this," Dr. Torres said over the video link. "We can create a portal large enough to move an entire solar system." Carter stared at the technical data. "Move a solar system? Where?" "Anywhere," Torres replied. "We could relocate Earth itself, take our entire world out of reach of any alien fleet." The implications were staggering. Humanity could become truly untouchable, able to move their homeworld whenever threatened. But it would take enormous amounts of energy, more than Earth could produce. "We'd need to capture alien power stations," Carter said thoughtfully. "Lots of them. Or," Torres said with a grin, "we could use their own ships as power sources." Meanwhile, the moral weight of the war was taking its toll on human leadership. Admiral Kethmol had begun using human prisoners as shields, threatening to execute them if Earth's forces continued their resistance. President Williams faced the hardest decision of her life as she watched alien soldiers push captured civilians in front of their weapons. Every human instinct screamed at her to protect the innocent. "Madam President," General Baker said quietly, "if we stop fighting every time they threaten prisoners, we'll lose this war." Williams closed her eyes, thinking of her own children safe in the evacuation fleet. "The war continues," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "God forgive us, but the war continues." The decision tore at every human heart, but it also hardened their resolve. The aliens had shown that they would sink to any level to win. Humanity would have to be stronger than that. Captain Rodriguez Jr., son of the hero Ben Rodriguez, led the most daring raid in human history. His target was the primary Caltharian shipyard, a massive space station that built the Empire's most powerful warships. "Dad, this one's for you," Rodriguez whispered as his ship emerged from a quantum portal directly inside the shipyard's construction bay. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Decades of ship construction were wiped out in a single moment, setting back the Empire's war effort by years. But the real victory came with the intelligence Rodriguez's team gathered before the destruction. They had learned the location of the Caltharian homeworld. Admiral Kethmol received the news of the shipyard's destruction while fighting human soldiers who seemed to appear from nowhere. Half his Void Reapers were dead or wounded, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the Empire," his communications officer said. "Human fleets are appearing in dozens of systems. They're using some kind of instantaneous travel." Kethmol felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of conquest. For the first time in his life, he wondered if the Caltharian Empire could lose a war. On Earth, Jake Morrison watched the latest battle reports from Luna Prime. The tide had turned completely. Human forces were no longer defending Earth. They were attacking across the galaxy. "Jake, look at this," called Lieutenant Foster. "We're getting messages from liberated worlds. The humans freed an entire star system today." Jake read the reports with amazement. Humanity had gone from near extinction to galactic liberators in a matter of weeks. And at the center of it all was the quantum technology that let humans appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. "Amy," Jake said thoughtfully, "I think we're not fighting for Earth anymore. I think we're fighting for everyone." Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, preparing for the most ambitious operation in human history. Her fleet was ready to strike at the heart of the Keltharian Empire, using quantum portals to bypass every defense they had. "Dr. Phillips, are the portals ready?" Carter asked. "Ready, Admiral. We can put your entire fleet directly into orbit around their homeworld." Carter looked out at the stars, thinking about how far humanity had come. From a species facing extinction to the liberators of the galaxy, all because they had refused to surrender. "Open the portal," Carter ordered. "Let's go end this war." Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue world that dared to defy the Empire. In his 300 years of service, he had conquered 67 worlds. Not one had ever said no to the Keltharian Empire. "Begin the attack," he ordered his weapons officer. "Target their orbital installations first. Show them what happens to those who resist." The first wave of alien ships moved toward Earth's defense platforms. Zithkar expected the humans to surrender. After seeing their defenses destroyed, every other species had done exactly that thought, but Colonel Wright and his defense teams had a surprise waiting. "Wait for it," Wright said into his radio as the alien ships approached. "Let them get close." The Keltharian ships fired their energy weapons at the defense platforms. But instead of staying still and fighting, the platforms suddenly accelerated. Using Earth's gravity and the moon's pull, they turned themselves into massive slingshots. "Fire everything!" Wright shouted. The mass drivers launched chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The projectiles moved so fast, they became relativistic. Weapons hitting the alien ships like hammers made of pure physics. 3 Keltharian destroyers exploded in balls of fire. Admiral Zethkar stared in shock. How did they do that? His tactical officer checked the readings. "Sir, they used gravitational acceleration. Their projectiles hit us at nearly 30% of light speed. Our shields couldn't stop them." It was the first time in 1,000 years that Keltharian ships had been destroyed by primitive weapons. Lieutenant Commander Tony Jackson led the first squadron of human fighters into battle. His ship was a modified civilian transport with Dr. Phillips' new quantum pulse weapons bolted to its hull. It wasn't pretty, but it could fight. "Remember, hit and run," Jackson told his pilots over the radio. "Don't try to slug it out with them. We're gnats fighting elephants." The human fighters swarmed around the alien ships like angry wasps. Their quantum pulse weapons disrupted the Keltharian shields for just a few seconds, but that was enough for other fighters to slip through with conventional missiles. Jackson dove his fighter under a massive alien cruiser and fired everything he had at its engine section. The explosions lit up space like a new star. But even as the alien ship died, its defensive guns were tracking him. "Jackson, you've got 3 fighters on your tail." His wingman, Lieutenant Sarah Webb, called out. "I see them," Jackson replied, pulling his ship into a sharp turn that would have crushed a normal human. But human pilots had been trained for this. They could handle forces that would kill most aliens. The space battle raged for 6 hours. Earth lost 42 defense platforms and over 200 fighters. But they also destroyed 18 alien ships, including 2 capital ships that were supposed to be invincible. Down on Earth's surface, Major Kelly Brooks watched the alien landing pods fall from the sky like deadly rain. Her job was to defend. New York City from whatever came out of those pods. What do you think they'll send? Asked Sergeant Mike Torres, checking his rifle for the 10th time. Nothing good, Kelly replied, watching through her binoculars as the first pod cracked open. What came out made every human soldier take a step back. The creatures were 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. They carried energy weapons that could cut through tank armor, and they moved with the grace of born killers. Caltharian shock troops, Kelly said into her radio. Just like the intelligence reports said. They're big, they're tough, and they're mean. The aliens advanced on the human positions with confidence. They had done this on thousands of worlds. Primitive species always broke and ran when they saw Caltharian soldiers. But humans didn't run. Open fire. Kelly shouted. Every building in downtown New York had been turned into a fortress. Windows had been replaced with gun ports. Rooftops bristled with missile launchers. The streets themselves were filled with traps and explosives. Aliens found themselves fighting not just human soldiers, but human civilians who refused to surrender their city. Office workers threw homemade explosives from windows. Taxi drivers used their cars as weapons. Even children helped by carrying ammunition to the fighters. Sir, Sergeant Torres said as he reloaded his weapon, I don't think these aliens understand humans very well. Kelly smiled grimly as she watched an alien soldier get taken down by a group of firefighters with modified fire hoses. No, I don't think they do. While the battle raged on Earth, Captain Ben Rodriguez was flying his stealth ship deep into enemy territory. His mission was suicide, but he had volunteered anyway. His ship was loaded with every sensor and camera the human military could fit inside it. Command, this is Rodriguez, he whispered into his radio. I'm inside their formation. Beginning detailed scans of the flagship, Ben's ship crept closer to Admiral Zethkar's command vessel. The alien ship was huge, bigger than most human cities. But Ben's sensors were designed to find weaknesses, and every ship had them. I'm seeing massive power conduits running along the ship's spine, Ben reported. If someone could hit those, the whole ship would lose power. He knew he would never make it home. His ship had been detected by alien sensors, and fighters were closing in. But Ben had one last job to do. Command, I'm transmitting all scan data now, he said as energy beams lit up the space around him. Tell my wife I love her. Ben Rodriguez turned his ship directly toward the alien flagship's bridge and pushed his engines to maximum. His ship hit the alien command center like a meteor, punching through their shields and armor before exploding in a ball of nuclear fire. Admiral Zethkar survived the crash, but barely. Half his bridge crew was dead, and his ship's main systems were offline. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Meanwhile, Dr. Phillips had achieved another breakthrough with the quantum wormhole technology. Working with Dr. Torres' discovery, they had figured out how to create larger, more stable portals. Admiral Carter, you need to see this, Dr. Phillips said over the video link. We can create doorways through space itself. Not just small ones, but big enough for ships. Carter looked at the technical data. The implications were staggering. How big can you make them? Big enough for a fleet, Phillips replied. But there's a catch. The larger the portal, the more energy it takes. And we only get one shot before the system burns out. Carter studied the tactical situation. The space battle was going better than expected, but they were still losing. Every human ship lost was irreplaceable, while the aliens had reinforcements coming. How long do you need to set it up? Carter asked. 6 hours, Phillips replied. Maybe 8. Do it, Carter ordered. Prepare for Operation Quantum Strike. The plan was insane, but that had never stopped humans before. Carter would take every remaining human warship through the quantum portal and emerge directly inside the alien formation. It would be a surprise. Attack like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. As the preparations began, Jake Morrison watched from Luna Prime as more alien ships died in Earth's orbital space. The human defenders were losing, but they were making the aliens pay for every victory. "Jake, look at this," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "We're getting messages from all over the galaxy. Other species are watching." This battle, Jake read the intercepted transmissions. Across the Empire, enslaved worlds were hearing about the humans who dared to fight back. Some were starting to whisper about rebellion. "Jake," Amy said quietly, "I think we're inspiring them." Jake looked out at the battle raging around Earth. Human ships were still dying, but they were also still fighting. And for the first time in thousands of years, the Keltherian Empire was learning what it meant to face an enemy that would never surrender. The tide of war was about to turn, and Admiral Zethkar was beginning to realize that he might have chosen to fight the wrong species. The United Nations building had never seen anything like it. Every world leader sat in the emergency assembly hall, their faces grim as they watched the alien ships on the giant screens. President Williams stood at the podium, looking out at the representatives of every nation on Earth. 22 hours ago, we received an ultimatum," Williams began. "Give up most of our people and all of our freedom, or be destroyed. I want to hear from every nation before we give our answer." The debate was fierce. The representative from Switzerland spoke first. "We should negotiate. Maybe we can find a compromise." The Chinese delegate shook his head. "There is no compromise with slavery. We have seen what happens to nations that bow to tyrants." "But their weapons," the Brazilian representative said, his voice shaking. "They destroyed a space station with one shot. How can we fight that?" General Chris Baker stood up from his seat in the military section. He was a big man with gray hair and scars from fighting in 3 different wars. "May I speak, Madam President?" Williams nodded. Baker walked to the front of the room. "I've been a soldier for 30 years, Baker said. "I've fought in wars where we were outnumbered, outgunned, and had no hope of winning. But we won anyway. You want to know why? Because sometimes the other guy underestimates what you're willing to do to stay free." He pointed at the screen showing the alien fleet. "These things think they know humans. They think we'll roll over like everyone else did. But they've never met humans who have nothing left to lose." While the politicians argued, Dr. Susan Phillips was already working in her laboratory, deep under the Pacific Ocean. She had the wreckage from the alien scout ship that crashed 2 days ago, and she was taking it apart, piece by piece. "Hand me the quantum scanner," she told her assistant, Dr. Kevin Park. "I think I've found something." The alien technology was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Their computers worked on principles that human science barely understood. But Susan had been studying quantum physics for 20 years, and she could see patterns in the alien design. "Kevin, look at this," she said, pointing to a small device she had pulled from the wreckage. "This is some kind of shield generator. But see these frequency patterns? I think we can disrupt them." Kevin looked at the readings on his computer. "How?" "Nuclear pulse weapons," Susan said with a grin. "If we modify our fusion warheads to pulse at exactly the right frequency, we might be able to punch through their shields." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Captain Elena Martinez stood on the bridge of the cargo ship New Hope, watching as families boarded her vessel. Children cried as they said goodbye to grandparents. Parents tried to explain why they had to leave. Earth may be forever. Elena's job was to command the evacuation fleet. If Earth fell to the aliens, these ships would carry humanity's survivors to distant stars. But Elena hated every minute of it. "Captain, we have room for 2,000 more." "People," Her first officer, Lieutenant Pete Wilson, reported. "Keep loading," Elena ordered. "I want every ship in the fleet filled to capacity." She looked out at Earth through the ship's windows. It was still beautiful, still the blue and green world that had given birth to humanity. The thought of watching it die from space made her sick. "Captain," Wilson said quietly, "do you really think they can win down there?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I think they'll try. And if humans are trying, anything is possible." Colonel Danny Wright was having the worst engineering challenge of his life. His job was to build orbital defense platforms around Earth in less than 24 hours. It should have been impossible, but Wright had learned never to tell humans something was impossible. "Sir, we've got the mass drivers online," reported Sergeant Helen Davis. "The fusion warheads are loaded and ready." Wright looked at the tactical display. They had managed to build 12 defense platforms by stripping every space station and mining facility in the solar system. Each platform had one giant magnetic cannon that could fire chunks of metal at incredible speeds. "It's not enough," Wright muttered. "We're still outgunned 50 to 1. Maybe," Davis said. "But we're not trying to win. We're just trying to make them pay for every inch." Wright nodded. Sometimes that was all you could do. Admiral Carter was in her command center, trying to do something that had never been done before. She was attempting to contact other alien races using captured communication equipment. "Admiral, I'm getting something," Lieutenant Jackson announced. "It's encrypted, but it's coming from outside our solar system." The message was hard to understand, but Carter could make out the important parts. It was from something called the Zeraphine Resistance. They were fighting the Caltharian Empire on dozens of worlds. "Admiral," the voice said through heavy static, "we hear you plan to resist the Empire. We cannot send ships, but we can share what we know. The Caltharians are strong, but they have weaknesses." Carter leaned forward. "Any information might save lives. Their ships cannot jump to hyperspace quickly," the voice continued. "If you can disrupt their formation, they need time to reorganize. Also, they always attack the same way. They have not faced real resistance in thousands of years." It wasn't much, but it was something. Meanwhile, Dr. Rebecca Torres was working in the Large Hadron Collider in Europe, trying to unlock the secrets of quantum physics. She was running experiments that her professors would have called insane, pushing the particle accelerator beyond its design limits. "Dr. Torres, you need to see this," her assistant, Dr. Gary Adams, called out. Rebecca looked at the readings and nearly fell over. In trying to create a miniature black hole, she had accidentally torn a hole in space itself. It was tiny, barely the size of a pinhead, but it was stable. "Gary, do you know what this is?" she whispered. "A wormhole?" "A quantum tunnel," Rebecca corrected. "A doorway through space and time itself." She stared at the tiny hole floating in the magnetic containment field. If they could make it bigger, if they could control it, it might change everything. Back at the United Nations, the vote was finally taken. 193 nations had spoken. The result was unanimous. President Williams stood before the cameras that would broadcast to the entire world and to the alien fleet waiting above. "People of Earth, and to the Caltharian Empire," she began. "We have heard your demands. We have considered your threats. We have seen your weapons." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Our answer is no. We will not give you our people. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not become slaves to your empire." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "You think you know humanity because you have conquered 3 million worlds. But you have never met humans who choose to stand and fight. You have never faced a species that would rather die free than live in chains." On Luna Prime, Jake Morrison watched the speech with his fellow soldiers. Around him, men and women from Dozens of different countries all nodded at the same time. "You want tribute from Earth?" Williams continued. "Here is our tribute. Every human who dies fighting you, you'll be a monument to freedom. Every ship you lose will be payment for underestimating us. Every day this war continues will be proof that some things are worth more than life itself." She leaned forward, her eyes hard as steel. "So come and take what you think you deserve. But know this, when you leave our system, whether in victory or defeat, you will remember the name of this world. You will remember Earth." The transmission ended. Above the planet, 300 alien warships began moving into attack formation. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. Jake Morrison floated in the observation deck of Luna Prime, watching the stars through the thick glass. He had been stationed on the moon base for 3 years now, and the view never got old. Earth hung below like a blue marble, peaceful and beautiful. Jake sipped his coffee and checked his watch. His shift would end in 2 hours dot. Then space began to tear open. Jake dropped his coffee cup and watched. It flowed away in the low gravity. Where there had been empty space moments before, massive ships were appearing. They came through holes in reality itself, emerging like metal monsters from some terrible nightmare. The ships were huge, each one the size of a city. Their hulls were dark gray and covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. "Command, this is Morrison in Observation Deck 7. Jake spoke into his radio with shaking hands. "We have unknown ships appearing near Earth. Large ships, really large ships." "Copy that, Morrison. We see them too. Stay at your post and keep watching." Jake counted the ships as they kept appearing. 10, 20, 50, 100. They just kept coming. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Jake had served in the Earth Defense Force for 8 years, but he had never seen anything like this down on Earth. Admiral Lisa Carter was having the worst day of her life. She stood in the Global Defense Council war room, watching the same display that Jake was seeing from Luna Prime. The room was full of generals and politicians, all talking at once. Everyone was scared. "How many ships are there now?" Carter asked. 300 and counting, Admiral," replied Lieutenant Tony Jackson, his voice tight with worry. "They're taking positions around Earth. Looks like they're setting up some kind of blockade." Carter studied the tactical display. The alien ships had arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around Earth. No human ship could get in or out. They were trapped. "Admiral, we're getting a signal from the lead ship," Jackson announced. "They want to talk." Carter straightened her. "Uniform. Put it on the main screen." The display flickered, then showed something that made everyone in the room step back. The alien was tall, maybe 8 feet, with reptilian skin that looked like green leather. It had 4 arms, each ending in clawed hands. Its eyes glowed amber, and when it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "I am Ambassador Vexthil of the Keltharian Empire," the creature said. "Your world has been selected for incorporation into our great empire. You will comply with our demands, or you will be destroyed." President Karen Williams had been called from the White House and was now standing beside Carter. She stepped forward, trying to look brave even though her hands were shaking. "What do you want from us?" Williams asked. The alien's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your tribute. 60% of your population will be relocated to serve the Empire as laborers. 80% of your resources will be transferred to Imperial control. Your military will be disbanded. Your governments will be replaced by Imperial governors." The room was silent. Carter felt sick to her stomach. The alien was talking about enslaving most of the human race. "And if we refuse?" Williams asked quietly. "Then your world will be reduced to ash and dust, just like the others who chose foolishly." We have incorporated 3,472,000 worlds into our empire. Not one has successfully resisted us. Captain Ben Rodriguez was flying his stealth ship, the Nighthawk, on a routine patrol when the alien fleet appeared. Now he was hiding behind one of Earth's communication satellites, using its passive sensors to scan the alien ships. What he saw made his blood run cold. Each ship was armed with weapons that could crack planets. Ben had studied military history all his life, and he knew what those energy signatures meant. These aliens had the power to break Earth apart like an egg. "Command, this is Rodriguez," he whispered into his radio. "I'm looking at their weapons systems. These things can destroy worlds. I've counted fusion cannons, particle beams, and something else. Something that reads like it could destabilize our sun." Back in the war room, the news got worse by the minute. Reports were coming in from observatories around the world. The alien ships weren't just warships. They were carrying millions of troops, construction equipment, and what looked like prison barges. Dr. Alex Thompson, Earth's best scientist who studied alien life, was reviewing the data from the first contact. What he found in the aliens' words scared him more than their weapons. "They're not just conquerors," he told Carter. "Look at the pattern. 3 million worlds. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They don't just want our resources. They want to erase everything that makes us human." Thompson pulled up files on his computer. "I've been studying their language, their ship designs, their technology. Everything is standardized. They take unique cultures and turn them into copies of themselves. If they win, there won't be any humans left, just slaves who used to be human." On Luna Prime, Jake watched in horror as one of the alien ships fired. A single shot at the moon's research station. The beam lasted only a second, but when it was over, the entire station was gone. 3,000 scientists had been working there. Now there was nothing but empty space and floating debris. Jake's radio crackled. "All stations, this is Admiral Carter. The aliens have just demonstrated their power. They destroyed Research Station Alpha to show us what happens to those who resist." The war room was in chaos. Some generals wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded they fight. Politicians argued about calling the United Nations. Everyone was shouting that President Williams held up her hand for silence. The room slowly grew quiet. "How long do we have?" she asked. Ambassador Vexthul's image was still on the screen. "You have one of your days to decide. Then we begin taking what we require." Williams looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. She saw fear, anger, and desperation. But she also saw something else. She saw the same thing that had driven humans to climb mountains, cross oceans, and reach for the stars. She saw the refusal to give up. Williams turned back to the alien ambassador. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "We need time to discuss this with all the nations of Earth." "You have one day," the alien repeated, and the screen went black. Williams turned to face the assembled leaders. "Call an emergency session of the United Nations. Get every leader on Earth here within 12 hours. And get me our best military minds. If we're going to fight 3 million worlds, we need to be smart about it." Carter stepped forward. "Madam President, our chances of winning a war against them are essentially zero." Williams nodded grimly. "Then we better find a way to change those odds. Because I'd rather die fighting than live as their slaves." As alarms rang throughout Luna Prime and Earth's defense stations, Jake Morrison continued watching the alien fleet. The ships hung in space like metal vultures, waiting to pick Earth's bones clean. But Jake also saw something the aliens might not have expected. All around Earth, human ships were moving. Not running away, but taking position. The Earth Defense Force was small compared to the alien armada. But every ship was crewed by humans who had just heard their world threatened. Jake smiled grimly as he watched a squadron of fighters take off from Earth's surface. The aliens had made one mistake. They had given humans time to think, time to plan, and time to get angry. And as any student of human history could tell them, angry humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy.